Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k Space Marine Let's Play. And when we last left off, we just killed the Orc War Boss. Quick gripe, if I do say so myself, it's kind of annoying that in the cutscene preceding, I explode his head with my plasma pistol, and then when you get his corpse there, he still has his head. Makes me a little bit sad. It would be nice if, you saw him headless there, but I'm not going to be one to complain too much about that. And we have now successfully, essentially defeated the Orc Menace. I say defeated, just obviously we, as a squad, we as a squad are no longer going to be dealing with orcs, really. It's now we're focusing primarily on the chaos threat, though, and they do make mention of it in-game. I like how the writer, there's only been one writer on this game, and he's done a very good job. And he even makes mention that now all the orc warbands are dispersing, and, there's no more cohesive unity between the orcs, and the war has essentially been stopped. And so now the orcs are essentially going to be fighting among themselves as well as they try to as they commence their power struggles to find out who's going to be the leader. Now, as I mentioned in the last episode, and I didn't look it up, I actually remembered, the Orc Titans are called Gargants. Yes. And as far as I'm aware, in the book series, I've only encountered them twice, I believe. The first one being a random Space Marine Battles novel against the Crimson Fists, I believe. I think that was the first one. And then the other one being a Caiaphas Cain novel, which has them fighting orcs on an ice planet, and they essentially end up, spoilers, they put melted charges, I believe, on the bottom of this ice cavern, and then when the Gargant steps on it, they blow it up, the Gargant falls, it loses one of its legs, and to be fair, the Gargant was already damaged to begin with, because, spoilers, there were also Necrons on said planet. And it once again ends with them running for their lives because you cannot beat Necrons, and they try to blow up the world. And then the Inquisition steps in and just pretty much locks it down, quarantines the entire planet, says no one is allowed to come here anymore because, well, Necrons. Good times. I will say, though, if we quickly want to talk about the Orcs, and, their mechanical prowess, because we got slightly interrupted with, our big boss battle and what have you. There are quite a lot of, novels and whatnot that involve orcs and Imperial Guard, because as I said earlier, they're really easy for Imperial Guard to, have climactic battles against them. One of which involves essentially just tank battalions and the entire basis for it. And you can find these ones in, I believe, the first Imperial Guard omnibus that they put together. I think there are two of them that they've put out. And you want the first one. It has, I believe, the Steve Lyons, the Steve Parker, and I can't remember who the third author is in it. But essentially the entire basis for it is that a tank battalion is going to a planet, an orc planet, because they want to commandeer and get their hands on a very famous tank. Now, I wish for the life of me I could remember, but I can't. There's a commissar who's actually dealt with, and I believe, the miniature tabletop as well, and his main claim to fame is during, I believe, the Armageddon, the fights that happened against the orcs on Armageddon, and it was one of his tanks, and it's incredibly, deep and meaningful, and so it's on the build-up for them assaulting Armageddon again. They want to provide this commissar with the original tank that he had. So they essentially end up going through and just, with their tank battalion trying to get their hands and finding this tank. And it's, a lot of things that are dealt with are, really grim, because it's the grim, dark 41st millennium. One of which, of course, being somehow a bunch of tanks end up accidentally rolling off a cliff. And so they climb down, seeing if they can get them out, and they can't. And they're also on a huge time limit. And pretty much they just... Turns out that tankers, and I don't know if this is okay, I don't think this cutscene is important. You're welcome. I don't think this is probably true in real life as well, but they have essentially a way to communicate by tapping on the hull. I don't know if it's Morse code or what have you, and it's essentially them saying, we can't rescue you. we don't have time, we're going to be leaving you here trapped in this tank. And then, you know, they tap back, oh, thanks for that, and then they off themselves. And you're like, oh, that's kind of sad. But quick thing before I continue with that story, what you saw right there, those Chaos minions that float, they are essentially the most dangerous enemy in this entire game. They summon in more units because they create miniature warp portals, but more importantly, the laser beams that they shoot at you, they just home right in on you, and they just will destroy your health bar in no time flat. They are just so dangerous, and you want to kill them first every single time because they will just demolish you. But yeah, so anyway, they end up, you know, racing across this planet trying to find it. And spoilers, it turns out that the orcs had actually found it, and they had commandeered it themselves. So they find the orc war boss, and they're all like, fire all of the missiles and all of our, you know, tank shells at them, just destroy these orcs. And they end up firing one of their shells. It hits the tank the orc war boss is on, and knocks off one of the armor plates that the orcs had, you know, stapled on there, because the orcs, you know, all their stuff is really gaudy and ugly and not well put together, but it works. And it knocks off one of the plates, and it turns out that it reveals part of the name of the tank, and it turns out that is the tank they're looking for. So suddenly the commander of the regiment just comes over the PA and is all like, do not shoot the tank. All units do not fire on that tank. So pretty much all these tankers are sitting there like, well, what are we supposed to do here then, guy? Like, how do you expect us to, you know, stop this when I think it was a Bane Blade, if we're going to be honest. It's like the best tank in all of creation. And we're just, what are we supposed to do against it? We're already shooting essentially a pea shooters at it. How are we going to beat this? And the answer is with amazing accuracy, because it turns out that the tank crew that we're following ends up lining up a shot with one of their tank shells, not an explosive one. It wasn't high explosive, I can't remember. I think it was armor piercing or something. And instead of shooting it at the tank, they just shoot it at the war boss on top of the tank, and the bullet just goes through them. And everyone's like, yeah, we're the best. But spoilers, orcs are a hardy folk. So when the commander of the regiment is then on top of, you know, the tank celebrating and all that, yeah, orc war boss wasn't dead, and he just like walks up, grabs the regimental leader pretty much by the neck and just offs him and just kills him. Just blam. And they're like, good, thanks for that, guys. So we have removed the mooring clamps from the Titan, as you just saw there. Now, I will say that I think this is a lower class Titan. It just looks really small for what it's supposed to be. I don't think they actually give it its designation, like, I don't think they name it here. And this could just be an instance of, once again, the trying to not ruin scale and make things look silly. Because, as we mentioned, well, someone mentioned in the comments in one of the earlier videos, when Mira is up against Space Marines, she seems quite tall. And judging by, you know, I did a quick Google, and Space Marines are on average, you know, between 2 and 3 meters tall. They're about 8 feet. And that's right, I use feet and inches for height. I'm one of them. But they're essentially 8 feet tall, so she should be coming up to about his elbow. And so I think that would made it really hard on the art team, you know, to suddenly have all these Imperial Guardsmen being essentially children in front of the Space Marines. And I think it was the same problem that they would have run into here with the Titans, because if they gave, you know, the true height of a Titan in the game, then we would be dwarfed, like ridiculously dwarfed. It wouldn't even be funny. Like the Space Marines wouldn't even come up to its toe. So I'll cut it some slack, you know, I think it's just, you know, a necessary evil for this game itself that they had to do it this way. But yeah, we'll just pretend that it is the lowest class Titan and the smallest one. It still has a butt ton of firepower and can wreak havoc across the world. But compared to, you know, the high grade Titans, the ones that I talked about earlier that have, you know, cathedrals on their back where, you know, people hang out, yeah, really not as dangerous. So here we get our first taste of melee Chaos warriors. They are also very dangerous. Spoilers. But again, it's not that bad. As I've said earlier, we're going to make sure that we have our autocannons for the Space Marines. Or sorry, not autocannon, the las cannon, and we also have our plasma cannon, so we can generally deal with them quite easily. Not a big problem.
Understood, Captain.
So yeah, I kind of end up mixing up our goals here, but there's two main things that we want to get done here. The first of which is, of course, stop the Chaos Invasion, which is our main focus now, and the other one is, of course, also to get the weapon, the power source, off planet, because we know for a fact that the Chaos Lord Nemeroth wants it. We can't let him have it, and we know that all it does is create evil, and so we need to get rid of it.
An entire Chaos fleet will hang over your Forge world.
Understood.
Oh, you saw there those things right there, those flying units. I don't really know what they are. They make them look extremely weird. Also, let's do a quick detour and find out what weapons in here, because weapons are sweet. And then I was sad. Stormbolters, if you aren't aware, quick spoiler, they're generally the weapon that are that are attached to Terminators. So Terminators are the big, bulky armor that the Space Marines can wear. Pardon me. And it's essentially, and it just spews bullets like crazy. Really great for, close combat. Extremely dangerous, way more dangerous than a bolter, but in terms of the game here, it's not a very good weapon. Again, the fact that it's a close range type weapon and its accuracy is garbage means that it's not going to be very useful for us. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, what are those weird flying things? They don't really give you an explanation for what they are. They seem really bizarre as well, like it's some weird snail type shape going on there. I don't understand it. They're really annoying, really powerful. Okay, I said really powerful, I'm kind of lying. They don't look at that. They barely dealt any damage, they didn't even get through my shield. But just the fact that they can take so many, high-grade weapon shots mean that they're just an annoyance that will just destroy you by 1,000 cuts. I'm not sure how exactly they came to be. I think that they were just essentially put in there as a new enemy type. You don't see them very often. I think we end up fighting maybe a total of 5 of them throughout the entire game. But more importantly, they're something that I'm willing to give a pass on, because as far as I'm aware, there's not even a miniature of them. They don't exist in any of the Dawn of War games. But obviously, you can take some liberties with the source material, because as we all know, there are a metric butt ton of mechanical things that exist. I'm not going to say weapons, because they aren't all weapons, but floating servitors. They have servitors for everything. Some float around carrying candles. Some are recording software. Some are like used as weapons of assassination. Some are just regular old weapons that shoot a las pistol and whatnot. So I'm sure it makes sense for them to be like, okay, let's make a little hovering enemy that can shoot. The question I'm thinking is, why would they use these and send them through warp portals with a Chaos Invasion on the way? If I had the ability, I would just be sending as many demons through as possible. Which, of course, is the reason why this part right here is going to be extremely annoying for us. What you're going to see here is essentially what they deem the cheese strat, which is hide along the side here, because it's the only way to make sure that they aren't going to constantly fly through and get me. Oh my gosh. So, they spawn more of these floating guys, who are, as I said earlier, they're the most dangerous enemy in the entire game, because that lightning will just shred me beyond belief. But more importantly, for this segment of the game itself, they cannot spawn in warp portals to spawn enemies, which is good. But unfortunately, the way this Titan walks means that aiming is just a nightmare in and of itself. Anytime he takes a step forward and whatnot, and you'll see the side there just constantly go in front of my view. It's so annoying. It's not fun. It's just an annoyance if we're gonna be honest. It's so annoying that you see that take up my Kraken bolter, just because at least that way I have a better chance of aiming properly. But once again, I do have my Fury up in case I actually do end up taking a lot of damage for some bizarre reason. Unfortunately, they do end up taking, as I said earlier, a bajillion shots to bring down, because they are the strongest thing known to mankind. That's a lie. The strongest thing known to mankind is your faith in the Emperor. There is no such thing as innocence, only degrees of guilt. That's right, I may or may not have, over the years, memorized parts of the Space Marine sayings from Dawn of War. Yeah, so we ended up walking this Titan all the way to the edge. Because, of course, we did.
Target the orbital spire.
Target acquired.
Firing now.
Messiah preserve us.
Alarm.
And luckily, somehow,
Shutting down.
the power source is able to easily plug into the Titan, because I guess there's just a port available that was like, hey, super rare and super dangerous power source thing. Yeah, we're just gonna, that we've never heard of before, we're just gonna put a port on that. Even more bizarrely is, and this is, I mentioned earlier that the writer is actually quite good, but there are a couple gripes, and one of them is when Titus is talking about how he's gonna use the power source and all this, and the Princeps, I believe they're called, who's leading the Titan, ends up saying something along the lines of,
That's done it.
oh, you want to use the power source? Like, we have no ability to do that. Even, you know, the major Princeps or the major
Cover the power source.
Mechanicus engineer, whatever, might not be able to do it, and then they end up doing it anyway, and you end up kind of sitting there and you're like, well, does your major Mechanicus or major Princeps who runs, you know, all the Titans, has he ever experienced this power source before? Because again, it was a super secret
To stop its exploitation by chaos.
science project that the Inquisitor was working on. He wouldn't have told many people, especially because, again, he's part of the Inquisition. So how would they have any knowledge about whether or not they can use this power source to begin with or not? And the answer is, well, hand wave it away, don't think about it too hard. And what ends up happening here is we end up putting it in, it makes our Titan weapons, which are already, you know, world-breaking, even more world-breaking. We shoot it at the Spire, but, spoilers, Chaos, you know, warps everything around it. And even though we blew up the Spire, it's still there.
Get this damn thing secured, Sergeant.
As quickly as I can. What will you be doing?
Also, double spoiler alert, do you think someone's gonna die soon? Hint, hint. Here we are holding this, you know, a power source for the entire game once we get our hands on it. Refuse to give it back to the Inquisitor, saying that it's what everybody wants. We know that the Chaos Lord Nemroth is going after it, and we just hand it off to our sergeant saying, oh yeah, get it off planet, I'm sure everything will be fine. Do you think maybe something's gonna happen to him? Just maybe? Just maybe? Spoilers, maybe?
Retrieve the warp device. Sidonus, get to the landing pad.
Aye, Captain.
Huh, they want the warp device. Good thing we just sent our sergeant off on his own, you know, for reasons. This part of the game, story-wise, not very well put together, I'll say that much. See, gotta make our characters stupid in order to progress it, am I right? Am I right, Marines? Sir, yes, sir. Mm-hmm, darn right I am. Sorry, that was not Warhammer, that was Halo. Which I'm quick sidebar. Who's really excited about the Halo Collector's Edition coming out on Steam? This guy. Man, I love Halo. I say that, but I'm only like a traditional Halo lover, meaning Halo 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm not a fan of Reach. Also, dogs are angry, because of course dogs are angry. Why wouldn't dogs be angry? But yeah, so this is an easy part with the last cannon, as I said earlier. Take your time, aim for the head, pretty much one-shot him. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I have literally no idea how these Chaos Imperial Guardsmen came down here. No clue. But yeah, so we killed them all, and let's go meet up with our sergeant, who's totally going to be super fine and dandy and not at all in any trouble whatsoever. Yeah, look at him there fighting dudes. Yeah, he's fine, right? Right? Yeah, fine. If only he had 2 working eyes.
Sidonus! At last. No! Such a pretty booby, hiding such immense power. This device is a gift from the Chaos Gods. It holds the key to my evolution, to my ascension, to immortal demonhood. My armies will spill humanity's blood across the stars. You continue to resist my touch. Only a deep connection to the warp can explain this. Will you be joining us soon? Brother?
So, Sergeant died. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that he would have died? I'm super surprised. Never would have figured that was going to happen. Also, they again once again are pushing that weird thing where, oh, you're resistant to the warp. Are you going to turn to chaos? Are you going to join us? Like, and I've dealt with this God knows how many times already. But just because you're resistant to the warp does not, in fact, mean that you're, falling to chaos. It just means you have the ability to channel powers from the warp. And as we already established, oh my gosh, the lightning is just way too dangerous. I am dying like crazy. But as we already established, librarians channel the warp too, and pretty much every chapter has librarians. So I don't know why they decided to push that angle so hard. I figured, oh gosh, please don't kill me. Grenades. Oh my god, I'm so hurt. I'm so hurt. Help me, I'm hurt. Oh my gosh, I am so hurt right now, guys. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so again, really odd. They're trying to push that, oh, you're totally evil and part of the warp, and join me. And you're kind of sitting there and you're like, that's not how that really works. But okay. More importantly, Nimroth got his hands on the warp device, which ain't good for us. No, sir. Oh my gosh. Also, this is probably the hardest part of the entire game right here. Just because you end up with all those guys who spawn. Oh my gosh. You end up with all the guys who spawn warp portals to summon infinite enemies, so you need to kill them fast. But also the Space Marines that you end up facing off against are using, plasma cannons, which, as we've already established, are extremely dangerous. Doubly so because they have splash damage and AoE damage. Splash by default means AoE, but you know what I mean. And yeah, and also they summon in 2 of the melee guys as well, which is not the best for us necessarily. So I might die a couple times here, but after this it should be generally smooth sailing. I will say that, again, oh my gosh, look at oh my god, that lightning, please stop. Oh my, ow, there goes all my health, all because that lightning is just so dangerous. Please keep it away, keep it away. But crap, what was I even gonna say? Oh yeah, so our sergeant died. Very sad. I'm just, making stuff up here because they never made a sequel. But I would have liked to imagine that if Warhammer 40k Space Marine ended up getting a sequel, it would have been nice if they ended up putting the sergeant into a Dreadnought chassis. Oh god, I'm stuck on the edge. Oh no, run for your... Oh, I'm stuck on the edge. Oh dear, please stop, please cease. Cease and desist. Run away. Oh my gosh, I'm stuck. Oh no, throw it. Oh my lord.
Only in death.
That was awkward. I got... Okay, so when you're carrying really heavy weapons, you can't actually dodge roll, obviously. So what I can do is that really crappy kind of like jump sprint thing. And it doesn't do enough for me when those melee guys are so close. So instead of trying to jump sprint again, I was like, screw this, I'm gonna drop my weapon and then I'll just, go fight. Unfortunately, the melee Chaos Space Marine decided at that exact same moment that he was no longer gonna chase after me. So as I dropped it and went to roll away, he did a 180, turned around, went after Leandros for no reason that I can fathom, and I rolled directly into his next hit. So that was on me. My bad. Nothing says dumb like seeing you do that. But yeah. So as I was saying, it would have been really nice if they ended up, if they made a sequel turning the Sergeant into, a Dreadnought. It doesn't entirely work because they quite obviously say he's dead. He's dead, Jim. But also I believe that one right there is a Star Trek reference, but spoilers, I don't watch Star Trek. But anyway, I keep distracting myself with random things. But the one nice thing with Space Marines is that if you are going to essentially like retcon his death, for instance, it's easy enough to explain away, because it turns out with Space Marines in general, if they ever take a lot of damage, like enough damage that could essentially kill them, their body will put them into a meditative coma where they're near death, but they can, survive or almost die, as it were, but not quite die. So we could have explained it away as, oh no, he went into his meditative coma, we couldn't save him, but we could if we put him into the Dreadnought chassis, so that's what we did.
Nemeroth killed Sidonus for the power source. You said the Inquisitor's work was heretical, Leandros. You were right.
What do you mean?
Nemeroth plans to use the power source to trigger his transformation into a demon prince.
Abomination!
How can we stand against such a creature?
I will kill Nemeroth when he's most vulnerable. During the transformation. Safeguard Sidonus until the apothecary arrives. Then join the Imperial attack.
Going alone is suicide. Or worse, we know the enemy takes great interest in your connection to chaos.
Do you fear my falling to chaos?
Of course not. Whatever lies behind your resistance, it can only be to the enemy's favor.
Why? Perhaps this resistance can get you close enough for a killing blow.
I will destroy Nemeroth with skill and steel, or die trying. If this resistance comes into play during battle, so be it.
So be it.
And yeah, Leandros is the worst. As I mentioned earlier, all he does is yell heresy and abomination. Heresy. Abomination. He's the worst. No one likes him. But more importantly, also, this is just a quick side note, because I ended up doing a random Google because I was curious. But Captain Titus here is said to be part of, and as a captain, he leads the second company of Ultramarines, which means that by default, Warhammer 40k Space Marine takes place in a parallel universe, the wiki says, because as I mentioned way earlier when I was talking about that one battle of the Ultramarines versus the Necrons, the person who leads the second company is Captain Sicarius, who is deemed, the best. So he hasn't died, he's not dead. So because Captain Titus has taken his place essentially in this game, they say it's in a parallel universe. But I'll also go back to saying about our dead sergeant very quickly, so meditative comas exist and what have you, and also Nemeroth just kind of like stabbed him through the stomach. Space Marines, I think they have 2 hearts, don't quote me on that, I can't remember, but they're just extremely resilient. They can almost essentially be cut in half and still live for quite a long time. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to say that, he's still alive and get put into a Dreadnought chassis. There's actually an interesting short story, I believe it's a short story, but don't quote me on that, and I can't remember what chapter of Space Marine it was a part of. But it's essentially a story of a group of Space Marines show up on a dead, I guess a dead Tyranid hive ship, and what ends up happening is because they saw a sucks to be that guy, but they found a Space Marine SOS signal, I guess you'd say, an emergency transponder signal or whatever, saying, help me, I'm trapped. But so they end up showing up, and what they find is a Space Marine who is in a meditative coma. So they wake him up out of it, and the Space Marine is pretty much like, oh man, I've been there for how many years? Like, oh man, all my battle brothers are dead, and yada 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 yada. And then what they end up discovering is, spoiler alert, that while they initially were only fighting, really old hibernating Tyranid forms who were pretty much just, in stasis because they were trying not to die, they actually end up also coming across some brand new ones, which means, dun dun dun, the Tyranid hive ship isn't actually dead and is trying to, revive itself. So they all line back up and they're just like, well, we gotta go back in, we gotta kill this ship because that's what Space Marines do, because that is what Space Marines do. So, spoiler alert, they end up going to the ship and they progress all the way through it. And slowly but surely they all start dying. And the way it ends is the original Space Marine that they end up reviving is I believe he's the only survivor. Everyone else is dead. And he's been wickedly poisoned. And he knows that he's pretty much not going to survive, so he harvests their gene seed, pulls it all around him, holds onto it, and then pretty much goes into his meditative coma, from which he knows he'll never wake, hoping that another Space Marine chapter at some point will come across the derelict hive ship and save the gene seed. Because again, the thing that's most important to Space Marines, aside from killing the enemies of the Emperor, are harvesting the gene seed, because it is literally the most valuable thing in existence. There's even an entire book which involves I believe it's Ultramarines as well, but it's also the Iron Warriors, because they're kind of connected a bunch. It's a Hanzo storyline. I've mentioned Hanzo before. He's an important person, or an important Chaos Space Marine in the Ultramarines Omnibuy and whatnot. And it's essentially about the Iron Warriors attacking an installation which is protected by everything under the sun, because it is one of the few places in the Imperium of Man where they actually create gene seed, or, kind of harvest gene seed. So it ends up with the leader of the Iron Warriors at the time, who isn't in fact Hanzo, breaking it open, consuming all of that gene seed, and using it in order to ascend to be a demon prince. Kind of like Nemeroth is trying to do in our game right here. But yeah, and it turns out that what they're willing to do, the humanity as a whole, and more in, for the sake of the story, the Mechanicum, because the Mechanicum runs the facility, is pretty much kill thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in order to make sure the secret never gets let out. So they have regiments of Imperial Guard who are set there in order to help defend the installation, because you need a bunch of soldiers, obviously. And while they're all essentially on the same side, they are also very antagonistic towards each other, and very secretive. I mean, the most obvious one, as I mentioned before, is the Inquisition versus everybody. But more notably, Space Marines don't trust Mechanicum, who don't trust the Imperial Guard, and no one trusts anyone. And they all believe that what they're doing is the most important thing. The one exception is, as I mentioned earlier, I believe the Iron Hands. They are the one Space Marine chapter who are really closely knit with the Mechanicum, because they essentially are the same-ish, as in the Iron Hands worship the cog, the Imperial cog as well. Also, oh man, look at me getting trapped there, and oh god, that's a melee guy. But what ends up happening is the Mechanicum give the Imperial Guard regiments that come to protect their installation, they give them vitamins in order to let them live in the atmosphere. And there is actually one soldier in particular who ends up getting separated at the start of the siege, and he runs out of his vitamins, and he's pretty much like, oh man, I'm out of my vitamins, this ain't good. And then as the siege progresses and as he continues doing his stuff, he finds himself getting stronger and stronger and feeling better and better. And once the Ultramarines show up at the installation to help defend it, what the Space Marines discover as they're walking through the halls is like, there are a lot of regimental standard banners here. Like, a lot. For the amount of years that, this installation's been established, there are way too many than there should be. And it turns out that in order to make sure that, no one ever finds out about it, if you show up, no one can ever leave. So the Mechanicum have been giving them these vitamins, which essentially give everyone who takes them cancer. So the reason why they have to go through so many regiments is because they kill them off relatively quickly. So they always need a new regiment to come in. So yeah, for the greater good and all that, am I right? Am I right, guys? Yeah. So that was depressing. Ooh, nice, I did find another log though. It's really unfortunate, again, as I've already mentioned, that we're not going to get very many of these because the stories are quite good. I mentioned a few of them earlier. There's also one of the guy who actually finds the signal for the initial orc invasion. And again, most importantly, the ones we should be going through here are the ones where Inquisitor Drogon is talking about how he discovered his research, how he discovered, the thing he found in the warp, and him wanting to, develop it, and then being an idiot and, having an entity look back upon him, and then pretty much getting murdered by it. Because good job, Drogon. You're a genius. So yeah, if you aren't aware, our entire goal at this point in time is kill Nemeroth. We've done everything else we need to, kind of, sort of, partially. I mean, we failed our goal in getting the power source off of the planet, but that's not our fault. Okay, it is entirely our fault because we gave it to that stupid sergeant. We managed to activate our Titan, so it can do one thing only, which was shoot a tower, which didn't destroy the tower, because good job us. And then for some reason the Titan just sits in the hangar forever, because why would we want the Titan walking around this planet under siege, right? Right, guys? Right? But the thing is that when all is said and done, gotta kill the big bad guy. We showed the Orc War Boss who's boss, and now we're gonna show the oh my gosh, Chaos Lord. There we go. Words are hard. Chaos Lord who's boss. Because as we've already established, he's planning on using the device and everything among it in order to ascend to a Demon Prince, much like that Iron Warrior who ate all of the Gene Seed. Also, look at that. See that? Look at how great that was. Man, plasma cannons are amazing. Well, they're amazing so long as they aren't overheating and then exploding, killing everyone around them. Which is something that they can very easily do in the Warhammer universe. Much like if you ever watched, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan or something, when you see, the soldiers with the flamethrowers get hit and then they go up in flames. It's pretty much that, but with plasma instead, so it's, I imagine, at the very least, 23.7 times worse. But yeah, so pretty much we're just ending. I'm going to be brutally honest here. I wasn't paying super tons of attention, and I'm not entirely sure why I'm doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I know I'm supposed to be going towards the tower, but spoilers, we're going to end up hitting a bridge. We're going to go across the bridge. The bridge is obviously broken, because of course that's all bridges are good for, breaking. And we're going to end up getting on, I believe, a gunship to then take us to the tower. And if that's the case, why didn't we fly on the Valkyrie that Mira brought us? The Valkyrie that Mira, Leandros, and Sergeant's body are on right now? Why not have us drop us off at the tower that we're trying to get to? Just throwing that out there. I don't know. But at least this we're going to kill more demons. And send them back to the warp. Boom. Get out of my planet. Place. Also, I will mention the kill animations they're just great. They are just amazing all around, and I just never get tired of them. I say that, but again, the downside is you don't want to use them as much as you possibly can, because you do not have iframes, as I mentioned earlier, and that's really it's just really sad. Why wouldn't you want to do the super awesome death animations as much as you physically could? If I do recall correctly, and because I mentioned earlier I don't use the Thunderhammer very often, because the Thunderhammer then doesn't let me use, my heavy weapons, I believe that if you end up doing the animation kills with the Thunderhammer, I believe that when it finishes it off, it also kind of knocks back everyone around you, so it's more viable for that. But yeah, we've essentially reached the point in the game where anytime we come across ammo and such, they're essentially laying out a full platter of every single gun under the sun. Pick what you like, go wild. Because we have worked hard, we've accumulated everything we need to, and we're just here for wild destruction. I say that, then immediately proceed to get hit by, oh my gosh, a grenade, while the freaking lightning guys are here. Oh no. I swear, the lightning guys, they just home in on you. Oh, it's the worst. Please leave me alone. I am a single space marine. I'm not a threat to anybody. Live and let live, as I always say. Yeah, just die. Just all of you die. Please and thank you, die forever. Appreciate it. You're my best friend. Adieu. Whew. That was pretty hectic there, if I do say so myself. I will say that even now when we have, essentially a Chaos Warp Portal, a giant one opening up, in the world, I'm still sad that this was made in the Age of Grey, where, you don't really get a nice color palette. Because, again, the best part about Space Marines and, all that stuff is just the color palettes on their armor are amazing. Like, you get, Salamanders have the green and black, you have the gold and ultramarine blue here. And, I mean, let's not even get started on, Blood Angels and whatnot, which, spoilers, we're going to see a shoot-off Blood Angel chapter in a short second. Could it be right down this pathway? I believe they are. There he is. He's a Blood Raven. If you are not aware, and I think I briefly mentioned it earlier, the Blood Ravens are an offshoot chapter from the Blood Angels, but were specifically designed by Relic for Dawn of War. So instead of essentially commandeering a Space Marine chapter like Warhammer 40k Space Marine here, they just made their own. They said, we really like, for example, the Blood Angels, even though they didn't end up taking advantage of the blood aspect that Blood Angels have. And instead, we're just going to make our own, call them the Blood Ravens, and it'll be great. And spoilers, it was great. Relic was really good at making these types of games until Dawn of War 3. But anyway. Yeah, so if you ever play Dawn of War 2, and I believe Dawn of War 3, but who cares about that game, you are playing as the Blood Ravens, and they are recognized now, essentially, in canon as a real chapter. The Dawn of War series also ended up getting, a novel. I don't know, I own it. I haven't read it, I'll admit that much. And I'm not sure what the canon for them is, because as I mentioned earlier in Dawn of War 2, they do have it set up so that you can either, destroy Chaos or fall to Chaos. So I don't know how that goes into the novels, or if they even bother dealing with it. An interesting thing, as I said earlier, is you end up in these situations where essentially one author takes one book series. So Nick Kime really is the one who deals only with Salamanders, and I think it's Graham O'Neill did Ultramarines, and oh my gosh, William King I think did Space Wolves, and I mean I could go down the list. There's just a bajillion. And then you have, kind of fledgling authors who kind of want to pick a chapter and kind of get there, kind of don't. Because again, and it also alternates, because again, Nick Kime also wrote, the Ultramarines novel against Necrons. And William King actually ended up giving, I don't know if he gave it or what have you, but after I think the fourth novel, the fifth and sixth were written by someone else entirely. Which I have a very minor gripe about that, but that's okay. And, So, I can't remember her last name, but it's Sarah someone, I can't remember, but she was a big, big proponent of the Flesh Terrors. And the Flesh Terrors are essentially the most degenerative of all the Blood Angel chapters. And I'm actually going to save my little talk about all that for the very next, for my final video, which should be coming up here very soon, because I think once we reach the end of the bridge here, I'm going to do a cut, and then we'll just have one video left. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, remember I said we were going to come across a bridge, and when we reach said bridge, we get into a Thunderhawk or what have you. So I'm not sure why we didn't just get one to begin with, but I don't know, whatever. But I guess I can list other things. Aaron Dembski-Bowden pretty much is the only one who dealt with the Night Lords. James Swallow did Blood Angels. And again, I do not like James Swallow's... I don't know if it's his writing style or just the way he does his stories. Not a fan of them. I think Ben Counter is responsible for the... oh my gosh, Grey Knights, which are the Inquisitors, the Inquisitorial Space Marines. Ben Counter is also responsible for the Void Drink, or is it the Void Drinkers? Blood Drinkers? One of the two. I'm sorry, I don't know. I haven't actually read that one either, so I don't know if it's good or not. Gav Thorpe is responsible for the Eldar. There is someone else who is responsible for the Dark Eldar, but I can't remember who that was, and I think John French does the Thousand Sons Ahriman series. I've only read the first one in that series, and it was really good. I recommend if you want, characters who existed in the Horus Heresy to then show up again in, 40k. Ahriman Sorcerer series is very good. But my point that I was trying to make is that while there is a single author who generally dedicates himself to a single, prolonged plot across however many trilogies, because generally they're done in trilogies, it's not unknown for another person to come up and write some other ones. For example, oh my gosh, let me quickly look here. That's right, I may or may not have just an untold amount of books right above my head. Who is this? Chris Wright. Chris Wright has also done a bunch of Space Wolf novels. Stormcaller is one of them. I can't remember what the other two are. I only see the one up here personally right now. But yeah, and since we have a bit of extra time, I will go into my minor gripe with the Space Wolf series. Now, if you ever watched the video of getting into the books, the thing that I love the most when it comes to Space Marines is starting them off as aspirants, so before they become Space Marines. I love, reading about them being chosen and then their training to become Space Marines to then become Space Marines later. But there's a mention in the Space Wolf Omnibus where one guy has really good smell, and then when it's taken over by a different one, they make mention that your initial character, who had a lesser amount of, whose nose was less good, is now better than the other guys, and I hate that, because it's a minor thing, but it was important, darn you. And I'll see you in the next one.